actually really kills it on the scooter. Video right here.
Can we put your video on it?
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's good.
All right, so let him get back to work.
Alright, so he's gonna get back to work. And do you want to shout out anything?
Just been riding here at Milestone. Just started training for Supercross, and yeah, it's gonna be a good season. I'm excited.
You taking a minute out?
Peace out, man.
Yeah, see you later. Hey everybody, we're at this is Nost Suspension, and it's actually Pete's house, and he's the owner of Nost Suspension, and this is like it's the world's best suspension ever, and he he doesn't work for it, he owns it, and he just does it in this van right here, and yeah, it's pretty crazy, honestly. You can't have one toolbox. You gotta have 4 toolboxes. 5, 6, there's like 7 in there. 8, 9. Suspension. So I just want to say shout out to Pete from Nost Suspension for hooking me up with everything, like back suspension, front suspension, and thank you to Luke's dad and Luke for taking my bike and like getting it all cleaned up, cleaning the air filter, new spark plug, and thank you. So let's get a new suspension. Alright guys, so this is Pete from Nost Suspension. So he started off with Nost Suspension, right?
Yep, started off with Nost.
And then it was getting like intense, I guess, right? So now he switched to intense suspension, right? Or
Intense
values by Nost. So started out this, now to
Yeah, so now we make valves.
yeah.
The valves are intense. They're totally new technology. We're taking over the world with getting rid of the old shim stack technology. We got cone valve, self-adjusting. If you look up self-adjusting, there's no other suspension in the world that self-adjusts itself. So it's pretty intense, and that's what we're shooting to do, is show the world how intense it really is. KTM50 fork. Basically, I'm just showing you what they come with from the factory, how they work, show you a few little things, just observational things that you can see when you're have one off, and kind of be able to experience what the kid is experiencing on the motorcycle, so that we can show you what happens when you make it better. Alright, so this suspension is got a hollow leg inside of there, and they have a spring inside of there, and they have a dampener inside of there. So the way it's designed is that as the mid-valve piston comes down, the shaft starts entering the cartridge, and the oil has to go through the piston, compression, and then rebound, so it compresses the spring. So on this particular system, because there's no exit area on the bottom of the suspension, they have to run the oil down pretty low, which means the top part of the stroke not going to have any oil in it, and then as it enters down, the piston will start hitting the oil and it becomes all foamy inside of there and whatnot. So when you have the fork off and you push on it, you can hear kind of the air and oil mixing, but then when the kid goes to land really hard, it doesn't have any bottoming cone or any squish to it, so it just pretty much goes metal to metal or metal to plastic. It has this plastic piece in here that it just gets smashed. Kind of sends the energy through their hands. Of course, kids want it to be better, so that's what we're going to show you what we do. So inside the fork, we showed you that we have our system in here, the stock system. So they have a washer, just a flat washer, and a spring for the compression this side and the rebound this side. So it's kind of a basic technology. It's not like a super high performing technology. Plus they have a really big piston. And one of the things that I like to explain is the way pistons work. The piston in the mid-valve area is a lot like, just to give a basic understanding of it, it's like going over to a pool with like a broomstick handle and so you have like a piece of plywood on the end of it. If it's a small piece of plywood, you go over there and it's just like so easy to move it through the water because it's so small. You make it bigger and now you've got some like damping, some resistance. You make it really big and it's like it doesn't want to move, so it's super stiff. Well, these are really small bikes, so having a smaller mid-valve for this smaller rider would be kind of a better direction to go, but they have a pretty big mid-valve. So then we have our mid-valve, which is smaller, a cartridge tube, and then a compression valve that goes in the bottom. So now we're not solid on the bottom of the suspension, we have a recirculating system, kind of like the big bikes have. So with the smaller mid-valve, and we have flexible shims on both the compression and rebound, so it's more tunable versus just a standard flat washer and your typical spring. There is some guys that make shims for these particular system, but the piston is so big and the shim flexibility is so small that it's kind of a small upgrade, but you could say it is an upgrade, but we like to go intense and make things really good. So this one has a completely adjustable mid-valve. It's also got the adjustable needle so that we can control the mid-valve flow. These don't have any of that, so next stop we'll show you how we're going to assemble it. Alright, so the complete cartridge gets assembled in the suspension, so it basically replaces the whole stock side and actually gets rid of a spring. So instead of having a spring in both sides or a spring in one side and air in the other, we're always switching these particular bikes over to a full big bike style adjustment system that has the compression adjuster, the mid-valve with shim control, the right size piston, the right size shaft, and basically makes this actually a higher performing system than even the big bikes because it's got a self-adjusting compression valve and a more detailed design in the mid-valve, so that it actually can make up a totally different variable versus the big bikes normally come with like a 20-year-old technology mid-valve piston and then basically a 20-year-old compression piston design that they just keep changing the sizes and they just make it look a little different, but the actual function is pretty much the same. Whereas this is completely new. It's actually self-adjusting, has a cone valve in it. It basically stays stiff for low speed, but blows off energy for mid-speed bumps and chops. And then when you hit something hard, it blows open and then self-closes itself so that it can be good for the big landing. So you can basically have plush and stiffness at the same time. So that's the complete unit, and we'll get it into the fork. Now this system's pretty easy to install. It's designed to work with the stock layout of the forks. It's actually one of my favorite layouts because of the way that it screws in on the top, holds everything down and together, versus having to hold it together with a base valve on the bottom of the fork. We machine a hole in the bottom of the fork so that you can access the adjuster, and then the cartridge just slides right in. And once it's in there, it can't come out. All of these pieces are manufactured to have a perfect tolerance, so when everything is tightened down, it will line everything up exact so that it's all held in one place.
What's all that?
This is oil.
Oh.
I gotta get a couple more pieces together.
Key.
Say it again.
This suspension is so much taller than me. Cranky.
I think you're just short.
That's probably one of them too. Yeah.
I'm kidding. You're tall for an 8-year-old.
Me?
Yeah, you're big for an 8-year-old. He's 10.
Like
No, you're 9. Yeah, you're 10.
fat or like tall?
Welcome to Midgets Are
You. That was funny. Okay. Oh my god, that's
Alright,
hilarious.
so I put the oil in there. I don't fill it all the way up to the top because we need some room to be able to put the cartridge piece in. So it's got the oil in there. Now we're gonna mount it up in the vise. Everything's been fitted and ready to go. Cartridge slides in there. Tighten it down with our special tool made just for this setup.
That's a cool tool.
It is. It looks like a bars.
So
It's
now,
like wide bars, but it's like a little tiny bottom bar.
Ooh, I can hear that. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
actually cut it, because I gotta figure out why this one's too tight.
Oh,
I gotta go back.
we'll be
Like
back.
Barsman.
I think
The bar spin.
Barsman. Derek Marr.
we gotta do some fine
Got him hidden, Derek Marr.
Alright, so inside of the other side, now that we got the damper side together, where'd it go? Back here. So the damper side's together, we got the adjustment screw on the bottom and the adjustment screw on the top, which is something that it doesn't have from the original form. We're trying to give it, like I said, the big bike, work like the pros bike kind of parts and pieces and adjustability. So now on the spring side, it comes with 2 springs, one in each fork, but in our system we put a cartridge in the other fork. So like, for example, the new Kawasaki's or the new Suzuki's, they come with a spring in one side or air in one side, and then the damper, the part that actually does the valving part, in the other side. So we do this the same way on the little bikes, is we put a heavier duty spring that acts the same rate as 2 of these. We put one inside of there. Well, remember I was telling you how there's nothing at the bottom. The shaft is coming in and they run the oil down low because they have to leave room for the shaft to enter in this lower section. The oil can't get out through that bushing very fast, so in order to keep it to where it works smoothly without having air and then all of a sudden oil and making foam, we put a bladder system inside of the spring to take up the volume for the shaft. Now in the past, we originally, back in 2012, we would make like an air chamber kit. And there's many companies now today that still make the air chamber kits. But the problem with the air chamber kit is the spring likes to rub onto this top cap, which makes little tiny metal particles, and the spring rubs on the inside of the tube, which makes little tiny metal particles. What happens is they get inside of these little chambers and it makes the O-ring stick, makes the air come out, and then your fork locks up. So with our bladder system, we end up being able to not have any problems with the metal shavings or little tiny metal particles that fall around on the inside. So this is the spring side. It does have a little bit of valving from the stock system, but we kind of detune it a little bit. Most of the valving is done with the other fork. So this one's going to go together. We already have the spring, oil, and bladder on this side. So we're just going to simply install this cap and put this one together. And then we'll have the forks complete. This side is pretty loose tolerance. It doesn't have a real good piston band on there, but basically it's got oil resistance right off the top, stiffer spring, and then we put in our bump system. Now the standard part that comes in there is a plastic piece, and that's the part that you're feeling when you bottom out hard. With our system, we put in a bump system so that it's got more than a ½ inch of cushion when the fork comes down all the way. The first video we showed you how it hit hard. This gives it some cushion so that when they land hard they don't feel that metal to metal feeling. And we don't also have to run the oil height way up to where it's like maxed out to where the fork loses some of its rideability. So
Rocco doesn't do big jumps.
I don't do it.
You just putter around.
Yeah. I mean, I jumped like a 2-footer. I jump like
You don't even ride dirt bikes, dude.
I only ride motorbikes.
What's that?
A dirt bike? I don't ride dirt bikes.
Who said?
I have no videos of dirt bikes.
alright, ready for some stickers.
Ooh. Rocco loves stickers.
Stickers is what makes it work, really.
The stickers is what the magic powders. Yeah.
Like, Rocco, how do you have such good suspension? Stickers.
I can't tell you, but it's a certain type of sticker.
Yeah, they gotta be good for durability. We put them on to protect the rocks and stuff from chipping up the tubes.
Yeah,
And it also makes it
look
nice.
Yeah, image is everything, so we like our sticker. It's the next big thing. Everything's intense, right?
Intense. Get it?
Take it easy. Doesn't that get hot when you start touching it?
Yeah, it's more of a clean off a little bit of the moisture that gets in the tube, so that
It gets very intense.
I get it.
Ooh.
So fresh and so clean, clean. Squeaky good.
Now pushing on the suspension, this side has the spring and this side just has the damper. But when you connect them together with the axle gets tightened up, all the bearings and everything, it holds them so they only can work together.
Teamwork makes the dream work.
What's funny is that back in 1998, 97, 98, Marzocchi had a spring in one side, damper in the other, and the magazines just ripped them to shreds, made them sound like they were the dumbest thing that ever came out. Now, 2016, 17, that's what the bikes are doing. So, as you can see, the media doesn't always represent what works, and they have a lot of bias. So, this system has actually been around for a long time.
Oh, it feels good.
Like a campfire.
Campfire.
You know, you gotta do it for the stickers.
Do it for the stickers.
Do it for the stickers. Do it for the stickers. Do it for the stickers. Do it for the stickers.
Another dabbing seizure. We will get you help, son. I promise.
Hey, whoa, take it easy. Take it easy.
Hey, stop jumping.
Did it. Oh, that looks nice.
It does.
Those are better than mine.
Beautiful.
Oh,
All right, what we got here is our
should
little
go back to first
SFF
grade.
cone sticker. The SFF cone sticker stands for single function fork, and then we make our cone valve. We actually have a patent on the cone valve system. It's something we've been using since 2001. I know a lot of people have heard about cone valves through WT suspension. They have a little bit different setup than we do. We definitely have a lot of experience with the cone valve.
Too hot for you guys?
You'll see the cone valve system in the future probably in most every suspension. It's kind of glad I got a patent on it
It'll
because
be quick when he's done. A.ka riding first. Just
all
to see
right,
if it works.
ready to go on the bike.
Yeah, it makes it tough.
So we got Rocco shock here. This is how it came from the KTM.
50cc SX.
Yeah, the one that they used at the Supercross races. So I don't believe they went internal and changed them up for the racers, but basically what we have here is a shock lever. I invented this thing back in about 2000, and most people kind of look at it like, what can you learn with a tool? And done a lot of talking to a lot of top factory suspension guys, and one of the things that you learn from them is that there's nothing you can't learn with. Like any device that you can learn with, whether it's a dyno, whether it's some sort of a shock clock system, anything that you can use to learn will help. So what I can do with this tool is, first of all, I can make sure that the action on it is, I can feel what the stock system is, make sure it uses full travel, feel what it feels like to use full travel. But then when we put the spring on it, I can see how the rebound reacts and everything. So it's actually a very helpful tool. And then some bikes, they come with parts that are somewhat difficult to take apart. So I can actually take the shock apart with some leverage and be able to get in there and get it apart without damaging the shock. So this tool here shows us that basically without hardly any effort, it just goes through the stroke. Pretty easy to bottom out. Oh yeah, probably.
Oh.
Take the slack out of it a little bit. There you go.
This?
So basically, a suspension, I mean the shock, you know, they have different shock shaft lengths, where the shock is positioned on the bike, whether it's got linkage or not. One of the issues with the KTM bike is that they have a really awesome shock. It's like a $1,300, $1,200 shock. One of the best made shocks out there. For a stock bike, it's basically like a factory shock. The problem is they put it onto the chassis, and instead of the wheel being able to go all the way up to the fender, the way they have it positioned is it only goes halfway up to the fender. So it's nice to have a really awesome shock, but it'd be more nice if they made it so it had an awesome ratio on the actual swing arm as well. Now we're going to yank this puppy apart and put some Nost in there.
Get nasty.
Get nasty. Like barely possible to push down by hand.
Or you're weak.
That would be the spring side on a 450 Suzuki.
Jeez.
Now this side is
Huge.
exactly like what's inside of his bike, but it's for the big bike. So like I said, we try to make, and what we really try to do here is we try to make an affordable, high-end, better than even say some of the factory rider stuff, in a sense that we've got cutting edge technology. We've got cone valve mid valves, cone valve compression valves, all kinds of little fancy trick parts, but we're trying to sell it affordably. We're trying to, you know, work with each customer like it's our best friend. And this literally, the kit that we're putting in here is the same kit that the half of the kids in California are using. So the top riders get the same exact best product they make. I don't have like a next step down that I do. It's always got to be the best or nothing. And I have a low overhead, you know. I work out of my box van. I've got a little miniature lathe right here where we can, it's got a digital readout. I can modify parts, polish parts. All of my shims, all of my stuff's here with me. And then I can spend a lot of money in R&D. I don't have to pay for a big building. I don't have to, you know, deal with all that high electricity bill stuff. I can just work from home, make the coolest trick parts, test them with the top riders around the country and around the world. And so what we're going to do here to Rocco's setup is we've got our piston, call it the XV6 piston. It's got 6 holes, but they're on opposite sides of the piston. Where this has 6 holes, this is the stock system, but it's got a little bit bigger holes, and then they're spread out equally. So a way a shim works is a shim flexes. So it's a lot like a piece of plywood, but in a smaller form. So if you bend the shim in half, you can get more flex out of it. If you bend it in 3 places, then you've got the distance between the edges are closer together, so it's going to flex way less. And then a lot of the big bike companies use a 4-port piston, which means it pushes on the shim in 4 places. So basically our system is a 2-port system, and then we use different thicknesses of shims. We're able to get away with a whole different breed of shims than what the rest of the world is using for the shim stacks. Now, we don't use shims in the adjuster. We still use shims in the mid-valve section. Same with the fork, same with the shock. We do have a cone valve system for the forks that we're coming out with for all the models, whether it's a Cobra 50, 65, all of the KTMs, the Honda and Yamaha and Suzuki, Kawasaki 85 forks. We're coming out with a cone valve system, but for right now we're still using the shims in the shock. So 2-port on the compression side, and then 4-port on the rebound side. It's a very trick machine part. It's not your basic just drill a couple holes in it and call it a new piston. As well, we also have some sliding bleed pins inside, which allow the oil to go through one direction and not through the other direction. Whereas these pistons are all designed, most pistons are designed where they have the same amount of holes on each side. We've kind of gone to the next level, saying, okay, for the compression side we like 2 holes best, but for the rebound we like 4 holes best. Most pistons will go 3 compression, 3 rebound, 4 compression, 4 rebound. They don't really separate it out. They don't really do what's best for each side. So I guess it just depends what you're looking for. But with our system and our adjuster, we found that having the compression valve have a little bit more flex to the shim stack with a lot thicker material, that we can get a whole better curve rate out of the system. So this basically is a system that slides together. Piston goes on, rebound stack goes on, and then we modify the nut to fit our system. Now typically when you have a stock system, you send it off to get revalved. They'll just take the stock parts, take it apart, they'll take the stock shim stack and they'll say, okay, he wants it stiffer. Okay, so we're going to add 3 more shims and make it stiffer, and that's all the modification they'll do. Where we like to take it to a whole nother level and make the system work high-end like. So that's what we got. This sucker's going together now.
Yes!
What do you think, Rocco? Any of that make sense?
It's gonna get nasty.
Now, this is the shock body. This is a WP shock body, and they, like I said, they machine this stuff just awesome. Outside of it is awesome. They use the air piston, which I think is awesome. There's no complaints about the quality of the external parts of the shock. I love that part. The only complaints that we ever have with any of the shocks is having the right design compression valve and right design mid valve. So the majority of every shock on the planet is literally 99.9% the same. There's no real super advantage out there of any company. They're all using basically the same shape pistons, basically the same design adjusters. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to up the bar. We're trying to give people a product that's got way more potential, and we're also trying to make it affordable. So it's a big gap there, a big difference in what we do versus what everybody else does. And the only way people are going to know what works best is if they try it. Alright, so now we've got the modified version with the adjuster and the piston in there, and we're going to show you the difference on the lever as far as the reaction. So we're going to give it the same boost of energy, but instead of just going straight through and hitting the bottom, it's got good strong progression to it, but at the same time it's still soft on the top part of the stroke. So it gives us a better overall progression ratio. Then we have our progressive spring, which works for the lighter kids, medium rate kids, versus the stock spring, which is non-progressive. So this one's very tunable. We can actually put a lot of preload on it and still have it be soft on the top, whereas this one's way too stiff on the top, but then it's great on the end, whereas this one's actually good on the top and the bottom. So that's our little setup, getting them all dialed in.
Alright, so thank you for making this happen. Drink with me. So that was today's
Just do it. It's your thing.
That was today's vlog. We hope you guys like it, and
Hey, you even got to ride a pocket bike today.
oh yeah,
I know, we didn't get into that.
you know, shout out to Pocket Rockets, you know. Oh, gotta go.
Oh gosh.
Turn the key on, buddy. There you go.
My right here.
Oh my god. You got all scared.
Alright guys, so that's today's vlog. I hope you guys like it. I want to say a huge, massive shout out to Nost Suspension right here. Just go follow them on Instagram, right? You guys have Instagram? Nost Suspension?
Instagram, not suspension.
Alright, make sure you go follow them. And shout out to Luke for bringing my bike out here, and keep it nasty. See you guys tomorrow.
Is this the best we got?
Yeah.
People, we need a toolbox. Goggles.
Going into surgery.
You're too short to reach me.
Aha.
I'm going in. You want your iPhone fixed? Call me.
And you want your makeup done? Call him.
Oh my
Why
god.
pairs of goggles when you need them? It looks like my screen
What
protector.
is attaching this phone? Okay, scissors, Rocco. I need scissors. We need to cut the umbilical cord.
Battery?
I don't know. He just about took my fingers off though.
Oh, that's the battery right there.
So people have said there's a memory card in here. That is the SIM card holder.
Is this the... Check behind the battery.
What's that?
That's the home
Oh, that's the home button.
Anyone want a home button? It still clicks.